Holodeck 3 program is reinstated.
Open sesame!
Commander Klingon vessel. We are energizing transporter beam. Now.
One, engage!
All right, hello and welcome everyone to Star Trek From the Holodeck, the Discovery Edition. I am Michael Flores, your host, and I'm in the studio and also the bridge. At the helm is David Sabal. Hello.
Communications are up, Captain.
All right, so you're at the helm and I'm sitting on the captain's seat with my leg flung over the side, with Uhura sitting on one leg and Deanna Troi sitting on the other.
I thought you were going to say T'Pol.
Well, T'Pol is massaging my shoulders, and 7 to 9 is hanging out watching. This is a very sexy, no, not sexy broadcast, very misogynistic broadcast. Very sexist intro. I don't think we have any listeners. I am very sorry, Star Trek fans.
Oh, Star Trek fans everywhere know that basically, you know what? Sex is about Star Trek.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with sex. Nothing wrong with a little bit of T'Pol either. At all, right, Dave?
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, so if you guys missed any part of our broadcast or you like what you hear so far, head over to iTunes or Stitcher and just search Star Wars From the Holodeck, the Discovery Edition, and it should pop right up. Add it to your favorites. Leave us reviews. Tell us we're sexist. It doesn't matter. It all helps. Even negativity helps, right, Dave? So we're okay with that. Also, if you like what you hear, head over to patreon.com/RainmanDigital and get more Star Trek From the Holodeck, where we discuss all types of shows and discussions. We break down Commander Riker, Picard, character developments, layers, Q. We're starting a new Q series as well. So
absolutely.
Lots of great things going on over there in terms of Star Trek. It is a great time to be a Star Trek fan with all that's happening with the movies and, of course, the brand new TV show, Star Trek Discovery.
Oh, yeah, Discovery. All those trailers, dude, that they've been releasing of Discovery.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I keep getting more and more excited. I don't understand why there's a lot of Star Trek fans who are a little bit negative about it. I feel like
because they're afraid. They're afraid of going into undiscovered country.
Oh, David! Hey, as long as you slap a little communicator on my back and you can beam me up later when I'm in the snow, that's all I need. Just always remember to slap that little tracker on my back and not let Bones know.
Not let Bones know.
So he can think we're gonna die, and then at the last minute, beam me up after I make out with a shapeshifter that's actually a man. But that's all right. All right, so CBS critics can't say, or I can't say anything, I should say. Can't say anything. They are not allowed to review Star Trek Discovery until after it airs. And I'm going to tell you something, Dave. I'm okay with that type of censorship. It's not really censorship. It's just the rules of the network. Hey, I'm okay with that.
They want to keep a tight lip on everything.
Yes, I think it's more about that than negativity. I think they're pretty damn confident with what they have. I think they know they have a win. And I don't think it's about negativity. I feel that a lot of people, including myself for the most part, think that when critics are not allowed to review something, it signals it's a bad sign.
It's a bad sign.
It signals, non-confidence in your end product. But in this case, I think CBS just wants us to be special. In this day and age, it's very hard to keep things secret. It's very, very hard with the advent of social media, and then now with all the cons and the actors going to con circuits, dropping spoilers like Jonathan Frakes did. I mean, it doesn't leave a lot of room for secrecy. So for a network just to want to do something special, that's all it's about. It's about making it an event and something special for the audiences out there more than anything. So I'm okay with that. I wouldn't mind seeing more of that. Not letting people review it till it's out. That way nobody, gets anything ruined for them. Do you agree or disagree with that?
No, I totally agree with it, because to coin a phrase, to steal a phrase from Star Trek, it's the most logical thing to do.
Oh, look at you.
Because here's the thing. We haven't had a Star Trek show in what? Probably close to a decade. I mean, when was Enterprise? Enterprise was 2000. I want to say it was at least a good couple years.
Yeah.
Since we've had Star Trek on TV. And that's a major thing.
I think 12 years.
Yeah.
Over 12 years.
And that's a major thing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, like, to keep it kind of on the down low, we want everyone to experience this at the same time.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good thing because, like,
Keep it on the down low like Sulu did for so many years.
here's the thing is, like, when you look at the history of television, there's not many franchises that have continued on as long as Star Trek has.
Oh, no. Yeah.
There hasn't.
50 years, man.
And like, can you name anything that's come close to being this long running?
No.
And I can't think of any television series that's literally been with the television audience for, just like what you said, 50 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It's been a really long time.
Been a long time. And there are going to be little kinks and things to work out when you're dealing with a franchise that's been going on for over 50 years. There are going to be some issues of canon problems. I mean, that's just a given. It's already been mistakes made. And we've talked about this already on other discussions, so we don't need to get into it again. If you want to hear our discussion on that, just go to iTunes and then search Star Wars From the Holodeck, and you'll get that.
Star Trek From the Holodeck.
Yeah. Oh, what did I say?
You said Star Wars.
Oh, my bad.
Wow,
that's blasphemous. I think I just lost all of our Star Trek fans. I just searched Star Trek From the Holodeck. Star Trek From the Holodeck. All right. So, according to a CBS executive, Discovery will be intelligent, cinematic, and grittier than anything seen before in Star Trek. And those three words there get me a Star Trek boner immediately. Because isn't that what we want? We want the intelligence brought back to Star Trek.
Absolutely.
We want that cinematic feel so that we feel like we're watching a movie. And the grittier aspect, I don't have problems with the Star Trek stories that we had in the past. I felt like they were grittier for what they were trying to do, or they were gritty enough for what they were trying to do.
And for their time.
But if they're trying to tell a story, on the final frontier and true discovery, I mean, that's the name, right?
Yeah.
With Discovery, there's grit. When you're traveling and you're blazing trails, guess what happens? It isn't a happy trail, right? It isn't all easy. You're going to get some scratches. There's going to be some scuffles. There's going to be some disagreements. And that's why I feel like taking this show down a grittier path was a good decision. Again, this is me not seeing it yet, so we shall see. We're only a few days away now before the premiere. 5 days away, to be exact. But it does make sense with what has been released in terms of what they're trying to do and also the time frame.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're already throwing out some key moments of Gene Roddenberry's incessant request that he's always had. It was a key thing, a key factor to every Star Trek, and it was to never allow ongoing battles between Star Trek characters. He wanted there to be a certain amount of peace.
Yes.
His whole point was a socialist society that lived in harmony. So to have crew members at each other's throats all the time wouldn't be conducive with the world he created.
Yes.
And I still believe in that. I think Star Trek should try to stick to that. Now, if these are select problems that are happening because of a ship, and it's because of a reason, they can make it work.
Yeah.
They can make it work without throwing away the conducive nature of the socialist harmony of the Star Trek universe. But there's got to be that inciting incident that causes the problems within this crew and for them to be at odds with each other.
Well, that's the one thing that basically you hit on the head with when it comes to what makes a Star Trek series. And one of the biggest things for me that makes a Star Trek show is the intelligence.
Right.
And intelligence is basically the show has to be philosophical and also kind of, I don't want to like higher, basically for the audience that's higher learning. Right. And it's supposed to be like that.
You want it to be high art.
High art.
And
thank
not
you.
low
That's
art.
That's the term that I was trying to find is high art, because when you look at Gene Roddenberry's overall writing since the very first original series to Deep Space Nine to the Next Generation and everything, the one thing that has always been there is kind of like this type of storytelling that focuses on intelligence, morality, philosophy.
Yeah.
And it's not low-hanging fruit.
Right. And if you use those ingredients as your groundwork, then you're going to have that story that's real life, that's gritty, and that then has those inciting incidents to justify the deviation from Gene Roddenberry's original purpose for Star Trek.
Yes.
In a way that wouldn't be disrespectful to the fans that have come to expect certain things of Star Trek. There just has to be that one moment that kind of justifies the reason why you're deviating. Much like Star Trek Voyager. I mean, I think people have very short memories, and we're going to get into this later in the show because there's a lot of this, and this happens. I mean, again, the last Star Trek show was over 12 years ago. It wasn't watched by a lot of people. And before that, we had Deep Space Nine in the 90s, Voyager in the 90s, and I believe the very beginning of 2000s. So it makes sense that a lot of these millennial bloggers who are young, that's usually the ones who are blogging, they don't remember a lot of these things. They're just being assigned work and trying to get traffic to their sites. But a lot of them are saying, well, this has never happened before. This has never happened before. People are going to be fighting with each other. They're going to be breaking Gene Roddenberry's #1 rule. And what was the very concept of Voyager? They were working with the Maquis.
Yeah. They were a crew.
In fact, the first, I want to say 1 to 2 seasons were dealing with issues amongst the crew. The Maquis were terrorists.
Yeah.
And they were forced, because of situations that they couldn't handle, to work together. And that also allowed for an interesting bit of, I don't want to say social experiment, but a little bit of character development that wasn't, those types of ingredients weren't available for Deep Space Nine or available for Next Generation or even for the original series. Voyager had a very interesting concept that they can kind of also throw out Gene Roddenberry's original plan as well. So Discovery isn't the first people to do it. You just have to find that reason that would make sense as to why the crew is at each other's throats, are fighting. I mean, Chakotay disagreed with Janeway
a lot of times. And
it wasn't like Riker. Riker would bite his tongue and he would grin and bear it. He would grab his ankles and bite the pillow. Spock was always fighting with the logic, but
Spock always fought with Captain Kirk.
McCoy fought with insults. I mean, it wasn't all, puppy dogs and rainbows either. Although I would have to point to Voyager as being definitely the first one to truly deviate from that norm. But look what they did. The writers created a concept that made it work. And that's where we're going to see Discovery succeed as well. They're going to create that inciting incident to where the harmonious nature of Star Trek and the socialist mentality of the Federation will be challenged.
I think that's the thing is, like, you bring up a really good point. The last series that everybody remembers is Enterprise. And Enterprise, while it was good, it wasn't very well received. And one of the main gripes about it was the fact that this crew just seemed to gel perfectly together and never had any conflicts with one another.
There were so many issues. Like we need to do an entire show for Patreon where we go into it, because I did like Enterprise.
I liked it to a point.
I felt like the last 2 seasons were really, really, really good, but I think the damage was already done with the opening first season. It just meandered. Archer was way too like podunk. Ooh, I'm on an Enterprise ship. This is so exciting. This is my dream. It was like he was just off the boat. So that was the problem with Enterprise. He was just way too happy-go-lucky
and too naive, Yeah.
And
it's like, I think that's why a lot of people are saying, oh, this has never been done before. Yeah, it has. It's just that the last series we had didn't have that.
Right.
And no one's actually willing to go back and take a look at the other series in a really nostalgic look.
Exactly. Now, this is a little bit of information, Dave, that I immediately, I didn't care if it was a spoiler. I didn't care if you didn't want to hear it. I Facebooked it to you immediately when I heard about it.
Oh, this one. Yeah.
And I was very giddy because anybody that listens to our shows on Patreon know that we're big fanboys of this element of Star Trek, and it's the mirror universe. Okay, so Jonathan Frakes drops an exciting Star Trek Discovery spoiler right on our heads. Jonathan Frakes, who has revealed a pretty exciting Star Trek Discovery spoiler. Though, according to this article, it's sad that it's not a Riker cameo, which I don't even know how that would even work.
I don't know how that would work.
Oh, I'm his grandfather. Oh, that'd be horrible. God, I hate when people do that.
No, we'll do another holodeck.
I'm a great-great-grandfather that looks exactly like him.
No, we'll do another holodeck thing where basically all of a sudden, oh, look, it's Riker studying.
Ugh. Yeah. All right, so when Star Trek first aired in the 1960s, there was no way of knowing how large the franchise would grow. But people working on Star Trek Discovery have been very careful about what information gets revealed about the series. Most of the reveals so far have been related to main characters, and the first officer, which I'm okay with that. I don't want to know everything. But William T. Riker has let the cat out of the bag. According to comicbook.com, it says that during the Chicago stop of the Continuing Voyage Convention tour, actor and director Jonathan Frakes revealed that there will be a mirror universe episode of Discovery.
There has to be.
Oh, man.
There has to be.
Oh, man.
Because every single series has had that moment where they go to the mirror universe.
Oh, man. I mean, I think people can tell by my voice right now that I'm ultra excited. I'm ultra nerd boy right now.
Because we got to see what the Terran Empire looked like.
Now, but this is the question, Dave. Now, the mirror universe is simply an alternate reality of sorts, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when Jonathan Frakes dropped that on us, is he talking about the alternate reality of the mirror universe, the Terran Empire? Or is this, because that's all he really said, or is this really not a true mirror universe? Is this going to be the episode where they explain to the masses, the mainstream, about the split timeline?
And that is where you got me. Because I was like going, okay, they could do a mirror universe. That'd be cool. They've done it. And when you brought that up, I'm like going, wait a minute. That's a good point.
And this went over a lot of Star Trek fans' head. Even the bloggers out there who proclaim to be Star Trek fans, they drew the conclusion that it's going to be the mirror universe. And obviously, that's definitely the go-to. That's where my mind went at first. But wouldn't it make more sense, rather than doing a true mirror universe episode, they do something that would help explain to the mainstream about the split timeline? Because a lot of the mainstream people, they don't understand. In fact, my mom, I just went camping with her for 10 days and we talked about Star Trek because she's a huge Star Trek fan. And the first thing she asked about Discovery when we were talking about it was, so they're just going to forget the new movies then? Because I told her that's taking place 10 years before and it's going to be in the regular timeline. And she's like, well, how is that going to work? I don't understand. Like, there's two timelines. I'm like, yeah, there's the Kelvin timeline that happened with the split when the Narada came. And then there's the current timeline. They explained it in the very first movie in 2009, how it worked. In a very elementary way, they were able to tell us, hey guys, this is a reboot, but not really a reboot. Everything you guys love is still in fact exists. We didn't write over all the history of TNG, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. It still happened, but it's a split timeline.
It's a split timeline.
I feel in order for this show to go over well with fans, I feel like, and this is something we've talked about on almost every single broadcast, Dave, it's something they have to tackle. Even if it's something very vague, very simple, if it's a throwaway comment, they have to definitively state the split timeline issue in some way.
In some way, because, like, here's the thing is, like, the question on my brain for Discovery, okay, Because for all the movies and all of Star Trek history right now, the most important time in the mythos is the destruction of the USS Kelvin.
Right.
When Discovery came out, my main question was, okay, is this after the USS Kelvin? And did the Kelvin get destroyed? Because the whole point about the new Star Trek is to show that the butterfly effect was to show that basically this little moment in time when Nero and the Narada showed up, it changed everything. And the changes were like a gigantic wave. And then I started thinking to myself, well, maybe that explains why the first mate of the Discovery, she's the sister of Spock.
Right.
And I'm like going, okay, so is this after USS Kelvin, or is this basically back in the original?
All right, some people have trolled us on YouTube. Ozzy NF trolled us, and I guess he's not listening to our discussions. Like, he listens, but he doesn't fully listen. So, Ozzy, no offense, but take the earwax, clean the earwax out, and truly listen to our discussion. Can we go into it? But he says the Narada was a different timeline. LOL. And Brian Fuller is not part of the show. Shmeh.
Brian Fuller
we talk about Brian Fuller all the time because he's the one who created the show. He started it. He wrote the script for the pilot, and they took his treatment, his concept, and that's what they ran with. The only reason why he's not part of the show is because he wanted to do an anthology series where every season was a different crew and a different ship. So he left because they had creative differences, and he left his proteges to run the show. So we talk about Brian Fuller a lot, and we're going to continue to talk about him a lot because his influence is all over the first season.
There you go.
Even though his proteges took over the series as showrunners.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue to talk about Brian Fuller, but I digress. Let me tackle the issue of the Narada being a different timeline. That's all fine and good. That's the problem. Now, but what caused the split? What ultimately caused the split? The Narada crossing over or his actions? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
When the Narada crossed over, did he still cross over in the prime timeline, but did it not create the ripple effect that changed and caused things to split? I know that's really crazy, and that's really me being nerdy about it, but they need to explain that.
Yeah.
Is there going to be a history of an odd ship, the Narada, crossing over and fighting the Kelvin, but the timelines didn't get affected? We already know how split timelines work in alternate realities. Every action, there's a reaction, and then it causes another split. So in this timeline, did the Narada never even appear? If that's the case, then we need to find out. You can't just ignore it. And I think that's what a lot of people think they're going to do. Well, the Narada never showed up in this timeline. Or did it show up, but it was handled differently? Meaning the situation didn't escalate to where a timeline did, in fact, split and create an alternate timeline that is now known as the Kelvin timeline, which is J.J. Abrams' storyline.
And this is what I mean by, like, Star Trek is that type of show that it has to tackle this issue, because all Star Trek series are high concept. This by itself is a high concept.
Yeah, they can't have, George Kirk. Is that his name? The dad?
No.
Captain Kirk's dad? I forgot Captain Kirk's dad. I think it's George. Let me look it up real fast.
I know his grandfather is Maximus or Maximilian.
Yes, it's George Kirk. George Samuel Kirk. Now, did George Kirk die? Is he going to show up in this timeline because he never died? Like, they're going to have to. It's something that they have to do, man. Do you agree they have to do this?
They have to.
They have to find.
It's right there, and if they don't, it's going to be that one itch that's going to irritate hardcore Star Trek fans.
Oh, it will piss me off. It will irritate me. And even if the show's good, it's going to always cause an itch that can't be scratched. They can't just ignore the movies.
Yeah, you can't. You can't ignore not just the movies, but you can't ignore the mythos of Star Trek. Because once you actually do that, there's a difference between actually the fan base of Star Trek and Star Wars. In Star Wars, we have latitude. Star Trek, there is no latitude. If you look at Star Trek fans, everyone is so hardcore in the details. That's where all the power is in Star Trek. It's the amount of details in the mythos.
Yeah.
And that's so important to people because Star Trek fans treat the mythos of the continuity of Star Trek like it's the Bible.
Yeah, I'm all over this like DePaul's catsuit. I'm all over it. I'm tight. I'm clinging to this topic. We need to know. It has to be tackled. I mean, I would think that this would be a little lame, but they could even start the episode up with a little blurb that says, this is a timeline that was not affected by Star Trek, whatever.
Or would be.
I know that would sound stupid and be a cop-out, but at least they took care of it.
Or no. Even just basically having the same blurb and then basically saying, like, this is 5 years after the incident of the USS Kelvin.
Yeah.
That automatically tells you, okay, this is basically deals with the movies.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because they're going to mention the Kelvin.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we're going to go to, I don't want to say a full break, but I'm going to play Star Trek Discovery's new theme song that pays tribute to Star Trek's past. They just released just a few days ago the actual theme song. And this is something that's been on my mind since they announced Star Trek Discovery. I wanted to know what that song was going to feel like. Is it going to feel like Star Trek? And sure enough, I feel like it definitely does pay true homage to Star Trek in almost every way. And they needed to hit this out of the box because this is a staple of Star Trek. Those intros are a staple of Star Trek. I don't think I'm the only one who absolutely hated Star Trek Enterprise's intro.
I hated that intro.
Like, how are you going to throw out the intro? How are you going to throw out that classic Star Trek intro?
Yeah. How are you going to actually try to basically, essentially what Star Trek Enterprise, what they did was they tried to change the wheel and the wheel broke.
Yeah.
Because it's like, there's a certain, we talked about it earlier, and I think we talked about it a couple times in our past shows. The music of Star Trek is so iconic that there's a certain feel that it gives you.
Yeah. Okay. So Dave, this is the Enterprise theme song, so we can all remember it.
It's been a long road.
God damn it.
Yeah, we are so mocking right now. What is this? I gotta admit, I kind of like it. Just because it's so 90s, even though this is like the 2000s.
I remember I saw this.
Don't ruin it, David. Don't ruin it.
No, they're not gonna change my mind. 'Cause I've got faith of the heart.
I see like Van Halen for some reason. I'm playing air guitar right now. This is, oh my God.
I remember seeing
Were they trying to get like a top 40 hit with this?
Yeah, I remember seeing this for the first time, and I was confused because I was like going, am I watching Star Trek? Well, no. Well, maybe they got the music wrong. Because I'm watching when you watch the opening and it's like, you see like the Enterprise and everything, it looks cool. But then you hear this like 90s rock.
Yeah, it's just, it doesn't help your show. Like in terms of holding up, it's very aged, and I understand it. In retrospect, when I listen to it and I listen to the lyrics, I get its connection to what they were trying to do with the story. But it isn't Star Trek. This was their grab, though. This is the problem with the Enterprise, is this was their chance to, this is their attempt. This was the studio's attempt to grab a whole new audience. If you remember, the title when it first premiered wasn't even Star Trek. It was titled Enterprise. They were trying to grab at a new audience that wasn't just the Star Trek elite. They were trying to save the brand because it was dying out already. So they were trying to save it, hoping to grab onto that new, fresh audience who would be like, oh, I'll check this out. Just a sci-fi show called Enterprise. Yeah, I'll watch it. And that's why they just bypassed the classic intro, because they were trying to make a regular TV show that would appeal to other people as well. And then by the time they were invested, they'd be like, oh, this is Star Trek.
Yeah,
it was a mistake.
The only time that that theme worked was, I hate to say it, the only time that this theme worked was during the season when they did the Mirror Universe.
Yeah.
You get that, you get this, but then in the background you see all the killing and all the wars going on.
I honestly think the producers were trying to serenade T'Pol with this. Like, listen, I'm going to make love to T'Pol with this. In fact, you know what? I would make love to DePaul while listening to this. Listen to this. Ready?
Gonna change my mind, 'cause I've got faith of the heart. Going where my heart will take me. I've got faith to believe I can do anything. I've got strength of the soul. No one's gonna bend or break me. I can reach.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah, I'm sorry for putting people through that. Here, let's play the new Star Trek Discovery thing. That's what we were trying to play.
Hi guys, how are you? Star Trek Discovery.
This is a little video that was released recently. Star Trek Discovery's main title theme takes cues from the past. I'm going to play the entire thing.
I got that fateful, infamous call where you pick up the phone and they want you to do Star Trek. My head exploded at that moment. When I first started thinking of what I would do for a main theme, I first needed to feel like I was in the world of Star Trek. Even though there's a lot of action in our show, I wanted to really play into how these characters are feeling.
All right, we're going to start with Star Trek Discovery main title. 1, 2.
First off, the fact they started like that just gave me chills.
Yeah.
The music of Trek is a critical part of the experience of Trek. The original Alexander Courage theme is one of the most iconic and memorable themes of all time. It's built into the DNA of the show. So there's a beautiful segueing in and out of the original theme into
Have
the
you
more
listened to
modern
this
theme.
yet?
Yeah.
Okay, dude.
It's good.
It's exactly what it needed to be. And there it is.
Yep.
That's the finale.
And see, it needs those two elements to tie it in. When you look at the Enterprise theme,
I think
there's nothing.
I think this might be the best theme since Next Generation. I really do. I mean, yes, and maybe there's a part of me that doesn't want them to use the classic cues because it's not the Enterprise. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like that song is a bit synonymous with the Enterprise. It belongs to that ship and that crew. And that's why Deep Space Nine and Voyager did something very different. Yes, they used the orchestra. Yes, it was composed, but it didn't belong. That song, those instrumental cues and notes didn't belong to that.
But they still had similarities.
Right.
They had
whereas this
little,
one,
cues.
This one's actually using a lot of the, direct rips, the way it finishes, the way it starts. I mean, how do you feel about that? That these cues are being taken, even though it's a completely overall, the song is very different. But the fact that they use that dunt dunt and they do the classic horns and the classic Star Trek theme, that's how they close it out. That's the finale. Are you okay with that? Do you feel like it's stealing from what represents the Enterprise crew?
Not really, because that song is so synonymous with Star Trek, not just the Enterprise crew, but with Star Trek as a whole.
So you feel like it belongs to Star Trek?
It belongs to Star Trek.
Okay,
now.
I could see that.
Like, whenever someone actually hears that song, no one ever says, "Oh, that's the Enterprise." No, they say, "Hey, that's the Star Trek theme." And that for me is what really made the music from the movies, and especially when I heard this one, this made me feel this is Star Trek. I am watching a Star Trek story from here on out. because that's what the music for Star Trek does. It sets the audience up, basically telling them there's going to be a sci-fi, high fantasy, high concept story. Get ready, buckle up. You're going into warp speed.
Yeah. All right. Well,
and that was the problem with freaking Enterprise. Was like, if you play Enterprise again,
come on.
It's like,
that's the Paul. That's the Paul lovemaking music. I'm gonna serenade her with it. All right. So, what's your grade? Let's grade this song.
Grade this song. I give it a B+.
All right.
I give it a B+. I want to actually see what it looks like before I give it an A.
Yeah, I agree.
I want to see it in conjunction with
a sequence, with a title sequence.
The title sequence.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I would also give this a B for now. And then once we watch the first episode this weekend, I'll change my grade, either for the positive or for the negative. But we'll regrade it.
It's just this weekend.
I know, man. It's gone by fast.
Discovery.
We have one more bit of news, Dave, before we close out the show for today. And that's a little bit of me trolling some people. Bloggers are idiots.
Okay.
How do you say this woman's name who's the lead? Sonoqua? Is that how you say that? Sonoqua Martin Green?
I think so.
The young lady who plays the lead of Star Trek Discovery. Also, she is, of course, she hails from the Walking Dead fame.
Yes.
This title, and this goes kind of with my other comment about the long, frustrating rule of Gene Roddenberry's about how all the characters need to live, harmonious. They got to live in harmony with each other, is a better way of saying that. And how I don't think a lot of these millennial bloggers, because they're young, they don't really understand that there's so much history to Star Trek. I don't think they understand or get it. They're just kind of just dictating news of sorts.
Uh-huh.
Well, there's a headline that's going all over the place. I see it popping up everywhere. And it's how Sonequa, again, I apologize, Sonequa Martin Green became the first black lead of Star Trek.
Huh?
Yeah. Apparently these jackasses never heard of Captain Benjamin Sisko. I mean, come on. I mean, the entire article that I was reading is about how different this Star Trek is in terms of being progressive. And I know people don't want to talk about politics. Believe me, I don't either. And unfortunately, because of the social landscape that we have today, Star Trek Discovery has fueled a lot of angry people saying that it's one big, Hollywood agenda. But that's not the case. If you're saying that, guess what? You do not understand Star Trek.
Yeah, and you haven't watched it.
Because Star Trek, from its very conception, has been about pushing boundaries, the progressive boundaries. It's always been. And this is something I always talk about, that, yes, this may have the first gay character, but guess what? It's not the first time they explored sexuality. Look at Deep Space Nine. What do you think of the Dax? What alien race is she again? A Trill.
Trill.
The Trills. I mean, that was just one big reason to explore transgenders. Homophobia. Star Trek has always been a tool of the progressive left to explore ideology. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what Star Trek does.
That's what Star Trek does, yeah.
But know your history, though, people. Like, this isn't, Star Trek Discovery isn't paving the roads with the first black lead or even the first female lead. We have Captain Janeway.
Yes.
We have Captain Benjamin Sisko. The coolest black man in the galaxy.
And I'm like going, wait a minute, why are we making... Do people not realize that basically we have Uhura? Now Uhura may not be the captain, but she was one of the major players in the original series.
I mean, first interracial kiss to be on TV. I know that sounds so silly now, but guess what? In the 60s, it was not. It was a big deal.
That was a big deal.
We had an entire movement that changed the world and the foundations of society and how we think. I mean, and we saw that. Gene Roddenberry was all about the progressive left. That's what he was. I mean, that's his ideology. And he was about using his shows to, push those narratives. And
he knew
if you think that
to push and not what not to push.
Yeah, and if you think Discovery is doing something completely different, either blazing trails for the positive or being a mouthpiece of the liberal left that you don't like, you don't get Star Trek. You shouldn't even call yourself a Star Trek fan.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'll be with you on that. Is like, if you're saying you're a Star Trek fan and you're saying that, oh, Star Trek is finally being progressive, you're not.
And I've seen a lot of articles.
You're not watching Star Trek.
I've seen a lot of articles like that, Dave, that said Star Trek's finally giving the reins over to a female lead. I'm like, what?
And that's why I feel that as hardcore Star Trek fans, it is our job to take those articles and start just spamming them.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna
start spamming them with Star Trek.
I'm gonna troll it. I'm gonna troll them, Dave. But you know what? On that note, we do need to end today's show. This will be our last broadcast that's like this. From here on out, we're moving into complete breakdowns and discussions, reviews, character development, story arcs. We're going to get very technical into the nitty gritty of Star Trek Discovery when it premieres September 24th, which is this Sunday. Remember that it will be available. The first episode will be available for free via CBS. After that, it'll be available only on CBS All Access. And if you subscribe to CBS All Access, guess what? You get to watch the second episode right away.
Yeah, that's
on the same night.
Part.
So David and I are going to watch them. We're going to do separate reviews, though. We're not going to do one bulk review. We're going to review episode 1 and episodes 2 to start. And then from there on out, we're going to break down each and every episode of Star Trek Discovery. I want to thank you, David.
Thank you.
I also want to thank all the listeners. Make sure you find us on iTunes and Stitcher if you're listening on our website right now. Also, the Rayman Digital app. Just search Rayman Digital in the Google Play and Apple iOS stores. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Live long and prosper.
I couldn't help but notice your pain.
My pain?
It runs deep. Share it with me.
End simulation.